One who has subscribed to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/scorenorth for daily Vikings content. And if you're watching on YouTube and you want to listen in your earbuds to the podcast version, Apple, Spotify, and scorenorth.com. And our guest today, Mike Sando from The Athletic. And Mike, we were just talking before we brought you on here, and you were showing us all of your football books, which are amazing. We're not just blowing smoke.
Both of them. Yeah.
We are huge fans of you because we feel like you have mastered, wherever you are writing, you have mastered the art of creating amazing conversation around the country, whether it's the quarterback write-ups you do. And in this case, what we want to talk to you about is you have ranked every single team in the NFL strength of schedule based on opposing quarterback tiers. And of course, the Vikings have the toughest schedule. But thank you for providing endless amounts of quarterback-related content over the years for us.
Well, hey, you're welcome. I love what I get to do, and really the last 7 or 8 years, I've had this job where, I haven't had to focus on one team and I haven't had to be on a beat, where you're really grinding. I love that. I did that for a long time, but I get to sort of forge relationships with people in the league and, come up with screwy ideas that are fun. And the quarterback tiers has been my favorite thing. Really, I've learned from people in the league and created a template that, through them that gives us an idea what the league thinks, right? For better or worse about the most important positions. So once I talked to the 50 coaches and evaluators this year, some of these guys you end up calling back, you're talking for an hour. I've broken down film with them when we've had discussions about certain quarterbacks just over a Zoom, this type of thing, or in person in other years. I plugged in all their ratings for the quarterbacks into the schedule, and here we go. Minnesota, toughest schedule in the league by opposing quarterback average.
Exactly. So how, Mike, how daunting is this task to not just based on the fact that the Vikings, if these guys stay healthy, are going to face a lot of good quarterbacks, but they're going to do it with a defense that had its nose tackle opt out and has at the best a cornerback core that's going to be incredibly young.
Absolutely. We know that the defense under Mike Zimmer has peaked, right? I mean, it's been as great as it's probably going to be until there's time to do a reload, but they're in this window and you're paying a quarterback a lot. That's what happens, right? You pay the quarterback a lot, the rest of the team slides off, and it takes the special, quarterback and offense to elevate above that. We've seen that. I live in Seattle area, right? Russell Wilson used to have the great defense, the great run game. Well, he doesn't anymore, and he's able to, to prop him up. But the rest of their roster has fallen off, and they're not really a Super Bowl team anymore. And Minnesota has kind of been in that window, probably going to stay in that window of a good team. But I think you're right that it is more daunting. And look, you got to play a tougher slate of quarterbacks. So we could see Minnesota maybe having a tougher time in the division. That said, I don't think Green Bay is going 13-3 either. So I think they're still right in the mix.
So just to illustrate this, so the Vikings play all of the tier 1 quarterbacks except for Pat Mahomes. Right. And that would include Russell Wilson, Aaron Rodgers twice, Drew Brees, and Deshaun Watson. And then they play a handful of second-tier quarterbacks. Tom Brady, by the way, is a second-tier quarterback, of course, is the greatest quarterback of all time, and he's on their schedule.
Yeah.
Matt Stafford a couple times, Matt Ryan, Dak Prescott, Phillip Rivers. So the weakest quarterbacks the Vikings play are whoever the Bears decide to roll out twice, either Trubisky or Foles, or Gardner Minshew. Even like Gardner Minshew took over the league for like 3 weeks last year. And so your weak spot, and I think Teddy Bridgewater would be on that list too as a third-tier quarterback, and we all have experienced what he can do late in games here. So if you really only have 2 weak spots, 3 if you count the Bears twice on the entire schedule from what you have found.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's an amazing list. I'm kind of looking over here because I've got this screen. It is an amazing list when you figure Dak Prescott. Where does Dak rank on this list? Dak is the 11th best quarterback they face. Is that? I mean, there's people who think Dak Prescott's a top 6 quarterback, right? You know what I mean? You could make a case that Dak Prescott's a top 7, right? A top 8, that he should be the bottom of the top tier or the top of the second tier. He's the 11th one on the schedule. That is amazing. So
aggressive.
Well, didn't Mike Zimmer say the other day he's never had a bad defense?
And it's true.
It
is. So we did the research on this last week. He's been a defensive coordinator or a head coach every year going back to 2000. So he had the weird year in 2007 in Atlanta. He was the defensive coordinator the year that Bobby Petrino quit the Falcons. So if you throw that season out, his worst yardage defense in any of those 20 years is 19th with Dallas back in 2000.
So here's what we got to do. Usually when you look at New England last year had that great defense, but they played the easiest schedule last year of opposing quarterbacks, right? We sort of all know that if you look closer, you see who their defense was dominating against, and it was like, well, you should do well against them. What we should do on Zimmer is go back and look and see how he's done against the other top quarterbacks, right? And other quarterbacks that are rated this high. And obviously it's not going to be as great because that's just the way it is in the league. Nobody has the magic formula that solves all the great quarterbacks, but maybe compared to other coordinators, he has a better track record, or maybe it's the same, or maybe it's worse. Maybe we could fine tune this thing. It kind of sounds like a project for me this afternoon.
There you go.
Just see, okay, what does it mean when they play top quarterbacks? Who does he solve?
What intrigues me though, Mike, about this is the lack of preparation time here, right? So like, and Zim's defenses ordinarily start with the 3-tech nose tackle, and like it goes out from there, and the cornerbacks are ordinarily, if not veteran guys who have been worked with a lot. So what intrigues me about 2020 from that standpoint, and this is probably true for lots of teams, is the lack of OTAs, mini camps, training camp time, preseason games. So I don't think that you can just say, well, I've always been successful and thus I will be again, because in this case, you're going to kick the ball off on opening week, and that's literally going to be the first time that you get an idea of, can some guys just flat out play?
Yeah, I think there's I'd say 2 points on that. Number one is I think defenses are going to have a problem coming into the season against veteran good quarterbacks, because they will not have had time to rep all of the exotic looks and blitzes and all those things that take timing and are hard to do. So I do think some of those upper tier quarterbacks are going to really feast on defenses early in the year. That said, I mean, it is a well-established defense in Minnesota, right? I mean, Zimmer's been there since 2014. You've got experience at all three levels, even though there are some new pieces, right? You have, you've got a great safety who's been there a long time. You've got a good linebacker, who's been there a long time. I think that helps, right? Some of the quarterbacks of the defense probably are not new, right?
Yes.
So they'll do some of the stuff they've been able to do.
Mike, by the way, people you can go subscribe to theathletic.com and support Mike's work and the local Vikings writers like Chad Graff and Arif Hassan here too. So I think the one thing, if Vikings fans are looking at this list of tier 1 quarterbacks on the schedule, Russell Wilson, Drew Brees, Deshaun Watson, I think they would get to Aaron Rodgers and say, okay, is he really a tier 1 quarterback still in 2020? From the people you talk to in the league, what is the word on Aaron Rodgers at this point in his career, and why is he a tier 1 quarterback still?
Yeah, absolutely. So the belief in the league is that he's still as good or better in every aspect of playing the position, except for probably he's not quite as good of a runner. And I think they've minimized that aspect of him running around. You've just seen a tremendous drop off in the upper tier veteran players around him at the receiving position, especially tight end. But I think the secondary receiver spots too. He's always been a creator, right? The type of guy who does stuff off schedule and then makes really high level throws and needs somebody who he trusts and is on the same page and is going to make the great catch in those situations. I think what they've done is they've put the type of offensive system in there that you would run when you're trying to minimize your quarterback, right? I mean, it's the play action game type thing that can make you think that Kirk Cousins is an upper tier quarterback by his stats, or Jimmy Garoppolo is, or Baker Mayfield is going to be this year, right? It's what you do when you really don't want that guy dropping back to pass a lot. I think there's a big disconnect in the organization. They obviously drafted a quarterback, but long story short, I think it's more different around him than him. And you can put on the reel of his throws. I mean, his incomplete passes are better than most guys' complete passes. He still makes the amazing rollout. I think this was against the Bears last year. He's running full speed to the sideline, throws the ball 50 yards across both hashes. It hits Jimmy Graham in the shoulder pad. I mean, he can still, I think, do all those things. And around him, it's not as good. And now I think we can see there hasn't been a connection there with McCarthy at the end. And I question, what it is really now with this whole group making decisions that obviously he doesn't like.
Mike, from the folks that you talked to for this, what quarterback, probably young here, intrigues people around the league the most as far as having the potential in 2020 to jump up a tier or two?
Yeah, I think that usually, so the fourth tier is reserved for people that, it's either Ryan Fitzpatrick, we've seen enough of him and we know we probably wouldn't want him to start the whole year, or it's somebody who, hasn't played a lot and we don't really know. And Drew Lock was one of those. I don't think it's complete, bet the farm that he's going to be great, but I thought there was positivity on him. There was positivity on Daniel Jones, kind of, even though I think he finished a notch below Darnold in the poll. I just sensed that was because he hasn't played as much, and so people gave him a tier 4 because they want to see more. But I think a lot of people think he may rise and jump out of that. And then somebody who already did well, who's at the top of tier 3 in his first time in it, was Kyler Murray. I don't think people were really thinking he's going to just go to tier 1, but that he could be somebody that would be in better position than like Baker Mayfield was a year ago to build on a good rookie year.
Who would you say, either one way or the other, which quarterback from all the consensus and all the people that you talked to came out different from the insider perspective versus maybe the fan perspective or your own perspective? So, wow, that guy was that. The insiders think that guy is way better than most people, or vice versa.
Yeah, well, certainly the kind of analytics-y based reporter, which we all are to some extent, would think that it wouldn't be so almost unanimous that Rodgers is a 1, right? I think the general perception is, hey, something's not the same there, and it's him. He's the reason. We're not seeing it. And you can do all kinds of studies, what's their offensive EPA and all that stuff, and you can say, well, must be Rodgers, right? So that's a disconnect. And then another one, I think certainly Lamar Jackson being in the top of the second tier, and you'd say, well, wait a minute, he's the MVP of the league. How is he not tier 1? So he got 16 tier 1 votes. And some of that is, guys want to see it again. A year ago, Mahomes got 7 tier 2 votes, right? I mean, some people just say, I want to see him do it again. So, obviously Mahomes was unanimous 1 this year. If Lamar Jackson were to have the same type of season, I think he'd probably go into tier 1, but there's still a huge contingent of people in the NFL, and I think correctly, who believe that to be in the top tier quarterback, you need to master the pure pass situations. And what we're talking about there is Tom Brady losing by 25 points in the Super Bowl. And you just have to throw. There's no amount of play action or run game or scrambling that's going to get you out of that, right? Or Pat Mahomes. He's down 2 scores to the 49ers in the Super Bowl with 8 minutes left. Or he's down 24-0 to Houston in the Super Bowl. The defense is nervous because this guy is going to be back there doing amazing things with his arm. Yeah. And so the times that, Lamar Jackson's been so great that he hasn't been in that situation much, but there's a couple playoff games. They threw it 58 times and scored 12 points, and you felt like the more they have to throw and you strip away all of those things that make him so amazing, it got harder and harder for him. And that's probably the way it's going to be early in your career, right? So he's improved last year. Does he make that jump? And now in a playoff game, they're behind by 10. And you know what? He makes some great throws and they win the game and he's going to be in tier 1.
Does the league feel that there is more from Cousins as far as what he did from 2019 to 20? Or does the league basically feel that this man has maxed out his capabilities as an NFL quarterback?
I think there were some people who thought that he's improved, who've watched him closely, that thought that he improved last season. I think Cousins is a hard one because I just don't feel like a lot of people love him and rally around him and like him. And I think that was part of, as flawed as the Redskins at that time, the Washington football team now were in their approach to the position and him. There's kind of something there to the fact that they weren't in love with having him, and you just don't feel, there's just not a lot of love for how he plays the position among people in the league. And they feel like he's being propped up by the scheme and all of that. I think it's probably just a tinge unfair. I think strip that away. The production's been good. I think we feel like when it's good around him, he's going to be good. I think he's more accurate than people probably realize. And some of the people who've watched him closely say that. So no one's thinking he's going to be in tier 1 ever. But I think there's an acknowledgement that, okay, he's either lower tier 2 or top of tier 3. And I think you could make a great case that he's lower tier 2.
Yeah. Mike Sando. Thanks for coming on, man. Can you show our audience a couple of your favorite football books before we say goodbye?
Well, I was so proud of my
YouTube
library.
crowd here.
I don't have the Schefter library that has. I'd like to just pause. I'd like to pause that and zoom in. Like, Adam, what are you reading? But I just happened to, before I moved I don't know if it was a cereal bowl that was here. We were looking. I like the football books. I take notes on them. I got Chuck Noll.
Turn that side. Yeah, look at how thick that book is.
That's the thickest book I've read, even counting college. So
that's like the encyclopedia of Chuck Noll.
That's Chuck Noll. Is that an autobiography? If so, Chuck Noll loves himself some Chuck Noll.
No, there. No, it's Michael McCambridge. It was a great book. I like those types of books. Yeah. Where Men Win Glory, Krakauer. Good book. So,
that's football.
That's football.
That's another thick one too.
I just enjoy the football books. I read Bruce Arians' book. What I like about those types of books is guys reveal how they think about the position. It's almost like getting into one of my extended conversations that I have for the quarterback tier thing. Sometimes you're talking to a guy for an hour and a half, and then you do it next year. You really start to get a feel for what they think. That comes through in some of those books, so I do enjoy them.
Love it.
Great stuff, Mike. Thank you.
Again, people can read Mike's work at The Athletic. theathletic.com/NFL is a great place to go. And is there anywhere else you want to direct people to right now?
Yeah, go to Sando NFL on Twitter. You can find, I'll usually put out my links there, and every once in a while stumble into an intelligent tweet too. So he might like it.
Awesome, man. Well, thanks for joining us. We appreciate it.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Mike Sando, that's a wrap on this episode of Purple Daily. We'll see you guys next time.